Hello, everybody, and welcome to the sixth episode of the BadMotoGP-Show. As you realized, Keelin is not here. He's on vacation in Hawaii at the moment. So I brought Remy along the line. Unfortunately, not Remy Gardner, but we will get there. Remy is a member of BrotoGP, so please introduce yourself.
Hi, Leo. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here with you on your great show. I'm a big fan of your MotoGP meme page as well. Bad MotoGP memes. You've definitely taken it to the next level, and I appreciate you having me on. I've been an admin of the BrotoGP Army page on Facebook for a long while. I think I would like to think we sort of started the little bit of the crazy MotoGP meme craze, but you've definitely taken it to the next level, and it's really fun I thoroughly enjoy all of your things that you post, especially the ones that make all of the Marquez fans angry. Those are my favorite ones.
Thank you very
But
much.
no, yes, it's very great to be here with you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to talk to you again because many people probably don't know this, but we did an episode of the BrotoGP Army live stream on Facebook last year, where you invited me kindly. So I thought I might return the favor now that this opportunity occurred. So you enjoyed the races.
Yeah, it was really good. Anytime, first of all, Portimao is just an amazing track. Even in the pure dry, it's beautiful and wonderful. The weather is usually nice, usually. But the track action is great. In my opinion, any racetrack that sort of follows the contours of the land, it's always going to be a lot better than. I'm not a big fan of any of the tilt tracks. Some of them are fine, but they're not my favorite, even though Circuit of the Americas is my home track, if you will. It's the American Grand Prix happens there. But with the rain mixed in, with all of the limited setup time and everything, I know that there's always going to be a lot of wild cards in the situation. They say rain is always a great equalizer, so it made for a very exciting, if not eventful, weekend. What did you think?
Yes, and I guess we have to start with Fabio. He dominated the race, and to me, he showed why he's at the moment the best rider in the world. He is, first of all, he did the thing on a Yamaha, which is even more impressive because the bike's a piece of shit. Nobody else even did remotely anything this season on this bike. And Yamaha has great riders, except Darren Binder on them. And Fabio showed that he's on another level. And he probably did the only way to win with the Yamaha in 2022, which was getting a great start, not being stuck behind the Ducati, and just hammering out the lap times. They were so impressive. He was so fast, and nothing but respect. I'm very happy for him because he's been through so much this season, stuck behind Ducatis, where, for example, Alex Rins last season in similar situations crashed all the time. He kept his composure and waited for his opportunity. It occurred, and he was so dominant, and I'm very, very happy for him.
Yeah, especially, we know that the Yamaha famously always does pretty well in mixed conditions or in the wet anyway. For sure, Fabio did an amazing job. You're right. That's one of the big bike's limitations. I think that's one of the trickiest things with testing for them is that, when you're in the test, a lot of times you have open track ahead and behind of you. And so the bike looks great. And then you get to the first track and there's a Ducati right in front of you making all sorts of dirty air, and all of a sudden nothing's working. I think they're still down on top speed. I think they benefited from the fact that Portimao doesn't really have a huge long straight where they can get blown by the Ducatis. Even the Suzukis are super, super fast now. So he definitely did a really great job. Dovi had a really interesting interview though, where he was saying he had a lot of times, GP guys won't really tell you the exact problem that they're having with the bike. There's always like, oh, we're working on this, we're working on that. But, Dovi actually had a great interview where he said that the problem is then when the bike is totally leaned over and that very first touch of the gas, the rear wheel starts spinning up. And then even when you get the bike straight, the rear wheel never quite catches them. So they lose a lot of drive coming out of the turns. but somehow Fabio is making it work. Which of course doesn't look good for the other guys. But he said something which is a bold thing to say. About the current world champion. Dovi said that he's ridden a lot of bikes, and so he knows where the Yamaha's deficits are. But that Fabio, since he's only ridden the Yamaha, basically doesn't know enough about the different bikes to know how bad the Yamaha actually is. But it seems to be working for him. Is ignorance bliss? When it comes to Fabio, he's just like, hey, he goes out and he just gets the job done. You can't ask for more than that.
Yeah,
so
and he still have to produce. I mean, excuses there for Dovi, it seems a little bit, but Fabio makes it work, and he makes it work in every track so far, because every track he had the maximum he could get. And Dovi didn't, Frankie didn't, and Darren Binder didn't. Where I would like to separate Darren Binder, because he's a rookie, you can't expect much from him. And what Fabio does at the moment reminds me too much of Marc Marquez 2019, or even 2018, where he was the only one who could ride the Honda in a proper way, and he was the only one who was competitive, as if Fabio is pretty much a Marc Marquez copy on a slightly worse bike.
Yeah, and that turns into a big problem, because on one end they're like, well, the bike is working for this guy that just won the race and the championship. I think a lot of people, the Yamaha sucks, but it's currently the championship winning bike, and it makes it very difficult for the other guys to complain. I mean, it was the same thing when Marc Marquez was on the Honda. They're like, well, if the Honda sucks so bad, why is our guy on his 8th championship? But that's a really easy spot to get yourself into. I mean, Dovi actually did decent this race. I mean, he ended up second best Yamaha. I mean, that's a lot better than he's done recently with, of course, Darren is going to be in the back. I think he finished dead last. But, and Morbidelli still hasn't kind of gotten his act together. Whether it's still the knee injury. I mean, they said that for a normal person, that injury would be a 6-month recovery. It hasn't really been 6 months. Maybe he'll get his mojo back. If not, maybe not. But yeah, Yamaha do find themselves in a tough spot where why would you change something if it's working?
But it's not really working. Last season it was working, but even Fabio is complaining. And if you're Yamaha, what do you do if Fabio leaves after the season? Then you're pretty much lost, because
you just
you can't even satisfy your best rider. And where the Marc Marquez comparison doesn't work is that Marc Marquez was unbeatable on that bike, but Fabio is beatable. He is sliding the brakes of the thing and finishes like 6th. I mean, I don't know how he manages to lead the world championship right now. He just takes the result as they come, and picks up the points, because consistency is key. This season, everybody's all over the place, and he's done miracles on a thing, but it's not like he is unbeatable or he's good in Fabio's standards,
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at his laps, I think he did 139s the whole race, except for the last 2 laps where he was 140s. I mean, it reminds you of the Jorge Lorenzo sort of method, and maybe he's riding it like that. Maybe he's not getting maybe he's getting into the turn faster, keeping that speed through, and then getting on the gas once he gets the bike up, as opposed to what most of the guys do, which is brake super late, flick it over for as little as possible, crank on the gas and drive it out. Maybe Fabio's figured out the sweet spot. But yeah, I mean, it seems like it works for him if he's up at the front, like Lorenzo used to run off in the front. It doesn't make for the most exciting race necessarily, but he's making the best out of a really bad situation. And what does Yamaha do? I mean, you either keep adding zeros to the paycheck until he says, okay, fine, I'll stay. But honestly, I don't think that motivates Fabio, not at this point in his career. I think, for him, winning more he has enough money now for at least 3 lifetimes if you didn't spend it stupidly. I mean, he wears a lot of very rare Jordans, which I know are very expensive, and he definitely has very designer tastes and everything like that, but he has more than enough money. I think he's at that stage in his career where, in that stage, I've been watching GP a long time, since like maybe 2001, 2002, give or take. I'm old, Leo. Much, but
Funnily
the thing is,
enough, I remember the first race, 2003 in
Wow,
Phillip Island. That's the first race I
nice.
remember. And yeah,
Oh,
I've been watching pretty much as
thank you.
long as you.
You're making me feel much better. That's good. You know, but you know, that sweet spot really only lasts for about 4 to 5 years, where you're just at the top. You know, you spend a little time getting up there, and then you're at the top, and then it starts. No matter who. I mean, look at Mark Marquez. I mean, I know we're going to talk about Marquez in a minute, but I mean, he's lost. Sure, he had that bad injury, but he's lost a little bit of that Mark magic, and part of that is just the mental advantage he had over other people. People see him as beatable. They don't see him as this god. Just like, you know, very famously in the movie Fastest, you know, Jorge Lorenzo, and this was back when Rossi was maybe on the downside of that arc, you know, where Lorenzo came out and said, you know, Valentino's done a lot of great things, but he's not a god. If you work in the right way, you can beat him. And that's where people feel about Mark. And Fabio is still on the upside, but he needs to be on the best bike for him, and he could be a multi-championship winner for
Yes,
sure. So
yes.
Yamaha needs to get him 30 horsepower from somewhere. I mean, Suzuki did it. They're on an inline four. There's no reason that Yamaha can't figure something out.
Yeah, so the excuse of the engine is pretty much gone, and it's not a good strategy to say you have to qualify in the front row. You have to bang out 5 laps where nobody overtakes you, and you pull like a 1 second gap, and then you have to keep a very, very good pace towards the end. This is not a
Yeah.
tactic that works in 2022. Maybe it worked for Lorenzo back in the day, but it's a different time and age, and Yamaha has to maintain the rideability of the bike and more
Absolutely.
horsepower and fix the rear grip issue, where I don't know if that's a chassis issue, if that's a engine issue. I don't know, but yeah, they
You know,
have to
but
fix it.
you know, you're 1,000% right. I mean, a lot of times, you know, Valentino always used to say that the problem was that the Yamaha always felt that they could program the electronics themselves, whereas all the other teams poached somebody from Magneti Marelli. As soon as they got the spec ECU, they got one of the engineers from there to help modify it. Excuse me. You know, but the Yamaha famously thought that they could do it themselves, but you're also talking about a time where the difference between you know, you could qualify maybe 1.5 seconds off the pace, and you were in third or fourth. You know, now you have 1 second covering the first 14 riders. First 14 riders is, you know, 1 second differential. I mean, the talent is very deep, and yeah, just telling Fabio, like, hey, all you got to do is get ahead 5 laps, clean air, you'll be fine. You know, you can't even do that in qualifying. You know, people are always looking for a toe. That's like telling somebody, like, look, man, winning the World Cup is easy. All you have to do is score more goals than the other guy. It's like, well, yeah, no shit. You know what I mean? So it's a bit of an ask. It'll be interesting to see how Yamaha responds. Obviously, the engine is locked now for the season. Whether it's aerodynamics, different swing arm, you know, I don't know. But this was a very good race. But again,
Yeah.
just like, you know, it was a mixed conditions, weird weather race. So, you know, would that still have happened? If it was a completely bone dry race? I don't think so.
It just takes a Ducati to be on pole position and have a good start, and all of the advantage the Yamaha has is gone, which brings us to the next topic. I would like to talk about Ducati,
Yeah.
because last year's Portimao winner, Pecco Bagnaia, he had a horrible crash in qualifying. We will discuss the qualifying situation later. But yeah, he started dead last, and he had a very, very impressive recovery. P8, not a great result if you're a Pecco Bagnaia, but considering everything, he's my rider of the day, because he was hurt, first and foremost. Then he had to cut through the whole field. And yeah, on a bike which isn't working properly for him. They seem to work in the right direction, but it's
Yeah.
not perfect. And yeah, he did very, very good. How did you see?
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, I'm a huge Ducati fan. You know, I was always a Rossi fan and then a Ducati fan because I own a couple of Ducatis. It's been the brand that I've always had. I'm on my 4th Ducati now. You know, so it's my track bike is also Ducati. So like I'm a huge fan. So I always, especially at the beginning of the season when everybody was like, okay, this is the bike to beat, this is the guy to beat. You know, I'm hoping some of this is, I think it's mostly the 2022 bike, and it's not so much that he's sort of feeling the pressure of the expectation or anything like that. At least I hope it's not. I hope it's a mechanical issue and not a mental issue.
Yeah.
But definitely an amazing comeback for him. Especially, I'm just glad he didn't break anything. I hope they can keep it together, and they seem to be making better inroads. But Pecco is already signed for next season, which is great. But and not to talk about contracts and stuff, but it's Jack Miller is not doing a bad job on it. He qualified well in a lot of practice sessions. He was ahead of Pecco,
Yes.
so obviously, people, it's always funny how some riders get no respect. And Jack Miller, for some reason, is one of them where people always sort of discount him. And you're still like, look, dude, like, he's multiple race winner and he's doing better than his teammate most of the time, up until, he makes really silly mistakes like he did in this race. But, Ducati, I think, are going to get better as the European rounds go. This is, again, a rain race. You can take limited sort of information from that, but I think as they, especially coming into Jerez, I think they're starting to get their head wrapped around the bike a little bit.
Yes. And Johann Zarco, he rides a GP22. He did very good. He finished in P2. He qualified on pole position, so it's not impossible. And Jack Miller fought for the podium until he wasn't. So yeah, of course it was an unfortunate situation for Pecco. First of all, that he had to go to Q1, which was a difficult situation for every rider. Then that he had this sore shoulder and a bike he isn't 100% comfortable on, but the other Ducatis have shown that it's possible to ride at the front with the Ducati. And I'm happy for both Miller and Zarco. Miller before the crash, because he did good and he needed this result. And it was a bit disappointing that Bastianini didn't finish the race. I mean, it's so important, even especially in this year, that you are consistent. I mean, take home 11th place or whatever. These points will benefit you in the end. As we mentioned earlier, Fabio is the world championship leader, and he had no good race in the dry until he won in Portimao. So it's important to collect points. It's disappointing that Martin and Bastianini crashed, especially when you consider that Bastianini is kind of a man of the second half of the race. So maybe there would be a little bit more points for grabs for him. I don't know. Nobody knows. But it's a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, it really is, because Bastianini went into the weekend as the championship leader, and then he wrecks out early in the race. And Jack Miller, you're right, because if you look at, he's wrecked twice already. I think he's had 2 DNFs this season already, Jack Miller. And so if you take wherever he was on the track, let's say he doesn't go any higher than where he is, I mean, he'd be probably top 5 right now in the championship right now, easily. And so he really needs to, up until Juan Mir, there used to be a saying, it's like, oh, this guy could Nicky Hayden his way to a championship, because Nicky Hayden famously, I think, won 3 races that season in 2006 when he won the championship.
I believe it was 2, but
was it 2? And then Joan Mir, I think, won 1 race and won the championship. So now I think it's called Joan Mir yourself to a championship. But I mean, Joan Mir just did what he had to do. If he had to finish 6th, he finished 6th. If he finished 7th, 8th, that's what it was. But at the end of the season, he was there because everybody else was making mistakes. And in a race like this, where everybody else is falling off, if he would have just stayed on the bike, it would have been, even if he'd gotten 15 or 13 points, that's still a good result for somebody that's already had a DNF early in the season. And plus, I mean, finishing ahead of your teammate, the one that everybody thought was the title contender or right in for the title this season. I mean, that would have been really good for his resume, if nothing else, especially going into maybe a dicey off season for him,
And it would be entirely possible that Jack Miller finished as the top Ducati and overtook Johann Zarco later along the line. But it was a little bit strange to me, and thinking about it, maybe Jack Miller was falling in love with the idea of finishing as the top Ducati a bit too much, because Johann Zarco was stuck behind Joan Mir for a couple of laps, and there was this great camera shot where you see them from above, and Joan Mir always was braking like 5 meters later than Johann Zarco, even though Johann Zarco had the better top speed. So that showed me that Joan Mir was a motherfucker on the brakes.
Yeah.
And Jack Miller seemed to be a little bit impatient, because after Johann Zarco got by, he wanted to go by immediately. Maybe he hit a wet patch there, I don't know. But as a rider, after those amount of laps, you have to know where to overtake and where not to overtake, especially a man with this experience of Jack Miller. So he was a little bit impatient, I guess, and was falling in love a little bit with the idea of proving everybody wrong and being the top Ducati.
Yeah.
So it's a real shame for Joan Mir, because his championship hopes got a massive hit because of this. He was in a very good position. He could have finished on the podium
Easily. Yep.
And yeah, he just got unlucky. I feel very sorry for him.
Yeah, he definitely got unlucky. You know, sometimes the luck is with you, and sometimes the luck is, you know, against you. And this time, it just seemed to be against them. And of course, those two have a history. You know, going back to, I think it was Qatar, the first race of the season. You know, where they had a little tussle and everything like that. So, you know, it makes for a good rivalry, if you will, if you can even call it that. But yeah, it was a bad result for Miller, and completely not Joan Mir's fault. And I think Miller should have been a little bit more patient, you know. But you know, they always say when you're racing, the red mist comes down, and then, you know, so maybe you make silly mistakes, and you know, at least he took responsibility for it. He said, it was my fault, I fucked up. You know, that's what happens. He's not like you know, so it's not like Mav. It's like, ask Yamaha what happened. You know what I mean? But, you know, I want to ask you, who do you think wins more races this season, Enea or Pecco?
I believe, or I want to believe, that Pecco and Ducati will get the head around the GP22 towards the end of the season. So I can totally see Pecco going for a run and win like 4 or 5 races at the end. But it seems like it's a little too late, like it was last year. But Enea Bastianini has the potential of winning another 2 or 3 races in the first half of the season. But with everything in mind, I believe that Enea Bastianini on the older Ducati, he won't get worse, but he won't get significantly better.
Right.
And I hope that Pecco will get significantly better, and all the Ducatis, and Jorge Martin too, Jack Miller, Johann Zarco, that they will get their head around the GP22. And that's why I believe that Pecco, when it's all said and done, will have more victories.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, at least I hope, but I think I also agree, because you know, there's a saying that's like, you know, when you have a MotoGP bike, it's very difficult to make it better, but it's very easy to make it worse. And I don't think the GP22 is a worse bike than the GP21. I think they have more data for it and they have it more sorted. But I think that especially once they get into the European rounds with some decent weather, hopefully, you know, even coming up in Jerez, they can get some weather, they'll get some good information and start sorting the bike out. So I still have hopes for Ducati. If I had to put my money on somebody to win the championship and stuff like that, at least manufacturer wise, I would still put it on the red team. So
I mean, they have 8 bikes.
I know. Hey, just stop telling everybody my secrets, okay?
It would be a little bit embarrassing for Ducati to be beaten by, for example, Aprilia or Suzuki when they only have 2 bikes. So if I have 8 bikes on the grid, I would assume that at least 1 or 2 riders will get good results every weekend. And
well, yeah, no, but that's you know, that's a kind of a what they push me pull you situation, right? It's kind of like, you know, if you had 8 girlfriends, you know, for Christmas, each one of them is only going to get something, you know, decent, you know, whereas if you have only 2 girlfriends, they'll both get a PlayStation 5, you know. So maybe they've spread their resources a little bit too thin, but it does get them good data. So hopefully we'll see them get their act together. But hey, the other manufacturers have an opportunity to get satellite bikes out there too. I mean, why doesn't Suzuki have a satellite team? Why doesn't Aprilia have a satellite team? I mean, those manufacturers should have more people as a pipeline to get younger talent. It should be a nice pipeline to get more information. It's like, hey, you go on the hard, you go on the medium, you go on the soft. Good luck. Let's see what the tire wear situation is, instead of getting Maverick and Aleix to do everything. You know what I mean? So it's their choice, and Ducati's taking advantage of the situation. But yeah. I just they are putting. You can't say that they are not putting absolutely everything into trying to win the damn Riders Championship. Yeah. And I hope they do it as a big fan. So I mean, even like, look at my water bottle. Look at even my water bottle. Okay,
so for everybody who's listening, shame on you if you only have 2 girlfriends.
But if you buy the 8 girlfriends small presents, it's okay. We understand.
Yeah. I mean, you want to have 1 main chick and 7 side pieces.
Exactly.
That's the way to go.
Yeah, and honestly, that's Pecco. And Pecco is I don't know. I hope he gets the job done, man, because that girl Enea is looking hotter every day.
Yeah, this will be a situation where we can discuss it in the summer break with all the silly season stuff, who gets the factory seat. There have been rumors that Martin already signed the contract for the factory seat. Don't know if it's true, but we will find out as time flies by.
With Martin, I'm just lucky. He's so fast, but he's made out of glass, and I'm just glad he didn't get hurt. He got famously hurt really bad at Portimao last season, so I'm just glad he didn't re-injure himself. And hopefully he's fit and ready to go. Because if you're talking about who the most exciting Ducati rider is to watch, for sure, it's Martin.
Yeah.
The guy that's probably the most consistent is probably Pecco. The guy that's fun to watch near the end of the race, Enea, is amazing. The guy, I mean, I just like Jack Miller as a guy, and I mean, I don't know how his teeth are not broken by opening those bottles of beer with his mouth. I don't know. Plus, I don't know if you'd want someone's mouth all over the lip of your beer, but I mean, they're an exciting team to watch, and Martin especially. And so I hope come the next couple races, if they can get good weather and some good sessions in, that they'll be there.
What was also a little bit strange to me is I've mentioned this earlier on the show, that everybody talks about Suzuki's great race pace, and I believe that's a reputation they earned in 2020. And they don't have that anymore. And talk about Joan Mir's bad luck as much as you want, or Alex Rins, what we will discuss in a minute, amazing race as much as you want. But the race pace at the end for both riders wasn't as good as people talked it to be,
Yeah.
And take nothing away from Alex Rins. He did a fantastic race, a more impressive first lap. He was so good. Even the first few corners, he was overtaking dudes on the outside. Very, very good. Calm and collected, didn't crash, which is this year the most important thing. Pick up like 6th places, 5th places, and if it's there, pick up a podium, pick up a win, but don't crash. That's pretty much how to win the championship in 2022. Easier said than done. But this race pace isn't there anymore. Is it bad? No. They have fantastic results, and they are consistent. They are fast on every track. But this narrative that the Suzuki is so good towards the end of the race is simply not true anymore. No, and this is not an insult. It's just facts, because they are fast as hell. They fixed the engine problem, unlike Yamaha, and they are producing very, very great results. But they are not as good as people talk them to be at the end of races.
Yeah, because even when Suzuki was doing well, I mean, Alex Rins was working his way through. He's passing people, which always takes a little bit of time, but even Joan Mir, I mean, he wasn't making up time on Fabio at all. Fabio was in the 139s. He was one of the few people. Fabio was in the 139s, and I think Pecco at one point was in the 139s, but everybody else was in the 140s. you know, and yeah, that race pace isn't, I mean, I personally, I was more, I think like most people, was more impressed with Alex Rins's performance than even Joan Mir's. Joan Mir was a little higher up, but I've always felt that Alex Rins was the faster of the two, but Joan Mir was consistent. You know, at the end of the day, you know, you got to stay on the bike to get points. And I think, and it's funny, we were thinking, like, has it been, you know, did he watch that documentary on Amazon and find out how much his team hurts when he crashes? And maybe he was like, dang, maybe I don't want to do that anymore to them. And because this season he's been much more consistent, which is fun to watch, because I think it really has to do with his hair. As long as his hair is big like Tim Burton, he's scary fast, just like a Tim Burton movie. But when he shaves it off really short and he looks like a cancer patient, you know, no offense to anyone, it's his season goes down, you know. So as long as he keeps that hair as large as possible, I think he's going to be there every weekend. Tim Burton style for life.
Yeah. He's channeling his inner Marco Simoncelli, so
yes,
that him
Marco
well.
Simoncelli.
Yeah,
rest in peace.
Yeah. There's a little story that I want to tell.
Sure.
1 or 2 minutes. Last year, me and my mom, we went to Tavulia and to Marco Simoncelli's hometown. I forgot the name. It's not Cattolica. It's Coreano. And and the museum there, everything is so beautiful. I can recommend to everybody who's near there, go there, visit it, pay a tribute. And yeah, it was the last home race of Valentino Rossi, and on this Saturday it was the 10th annual of Marco Simoncelli's death. So his dad and the team came over, and the flames from the monument were throwing yeah, you know what I mean. It was really beautiful. I can recommend to everybody to go there to Italy. And yeah, it's a different experience if you are there. So that to Marco Simoncelli. Yeah, but back to the MotoGP race. And yeah, we pretty much covered Suzuki. So
yeah,
I would like to, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you know, the only thing I was disappointed how every other social media post by MotoGP was not about amazing Alex Rins' amazing masterful race, whereas Marc Marquez did exactly the same thing last week, and all we heard less about the guy who won the race and more about Marc Marquez.
Yeah. Everybody was kissing Marquez ass on the broadcast afterwards on social media. And yeah, it's a little bit different what they did, because Alex Rins gained a lot on the start and Marquez had to overtake each rider as they came. But it's equally as impressive, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And nobody seemed to talk about it. Maybe because Alex Rins doesn't have any fans, so nobody cares. But yeah.
But you know, but I'm excited that him and Fabio are even on the points.
Yeah.
So it's almost, I mean, it's almost like 0-0. Like for between the two of them, the championship starts today. Yeah. You know, which is fantastic. And plus they're both at 69 points, and that's always nice.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Quick thought on Joan Mir. I would expect him to pull away from the Ducatis after half point of the race. You know, I would just expect him to pull away. Even when Zarco was behind, he had clean air. Just pull away a little bit. That would be what I would expect from him. And Alex Rins is now more consistent, even though it isn't Joan Mir's fault, and he's faster. So he's my early title favorite.
Yeah, it's funny. I literally said, who would you, even with Fabio and Champion, who would you bet on given the consistency? You know, Alex. I mean, I see what you just said. If Alex Rins was where Joan Mir was, Alex Rins would have pulled away from the Ducatis. Yeah. But Joan Mir plays it safe, and he just got caught up. I mean, if he would pulled away from the Ducatis, he wouldn't have been next to Jack Miller to have Jack Miller take him out. Yeah, you know, but that's not how he rides. Alex Rins does ride like that, for better or for worse. Alex Rins would have pulled away, and he would have came by easy, solid second place.
Yeah. Again, easier said than done. You still have to do it. But talking about a great race pace, Aleix Espargaro, he had a very, very good pace towards the end.
He really
And
did.
he had a bad start. I believe if he had a better start, he would have fought more for the podium. I don't know if he would be able to match Fabio, but yeah, he would be more in the podium fight. But he had a very, very impressive race. The Aprilia seems to work. And there were a lot of speculations if Aleix might leave. And I pray to God that he stays in Aprilia and Aleix figure this out, because Aprilia needs Aleix. It showed again yesterday. And Aleix needs Aprilia, because where would he go? And there's a high possibility that he would go to a worse team on a worse bike and had to do this hard work all over again. So he deserves to earn the fruits of his labor. He deserves to stay at Aprilia, which seems to be a good bike right now. So yeah, he was very impressive, especially towards the end of the race. Sad that he had a poor start, but he was very, very good.
Yeah, at least I definitely don't think he gets the respect that he deserves. I think people respect his hard work, but they don't respect him in the way that he wants to be respected. Now, probably that has to do with the fact that he hasn't won a race in any series that he's ever been in until until just a race or two ago. So that probably has a little bit to do with it. I love that little sort of Twitter battle him and Petrucci had a couple seasons back, where, or even Lorenzo, and Aleix had said something against Lorenzo, and Lorenzo was like, you must have a magician or a wizard as a manager that you still have a contract in GP with 0 wins, but he is a hardworking guy. And he is doing things on the Aprilia that nobody else is. I mean, Maverick is definitely not doing them. It would definitely benefit Aprilia. I think he started, part of his new thing with whether he stays or not, it doesn't take a scientist to understand what he means by, hey, we started talking, but we're so far apart, it's disappointing. Obviously, he has a number in his mind and they have a number in their mind. And I don't think he would be as upset, except for that. I think now everybody saw on, there was a Facebook page where they had the leaked rider salaries, and you saw that he was getting paid $750,000 a year, which is not bad. I mean, I don't get paid $750,000 a year, but I also don't risk my life every day at work. But his teammate was getting paid 10 million. Maverick Vinales is the second highest paid rider on the grid, which is shocking to say out loud. And so when he saw, because Aprilia probably said to him, like, we'd like to pay you more, but we're a small team, and with this money we can buy more engineers and we can put it in the development of the bike and blah 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 blah. And then he sees that Maverick is getting paid $10 million. You know what I mean? And so it's probably that's probably where some of his angst is coming from. Whether he's worth the money, I think if I'm Aprilia, he is. Because he knows the bike really well. Who else is going to go there right now? I mean, I've heard these fantasies, which I'm not going to, we're not going to discuss. But I've heard everything from Fabio is going to Aprilia, and so is going to Aprilia. Everybody wants to go to Aprilia now that they've won one race. But Aleix did do a fantastic race. He's the only one that's riding the bike right now. If they're smart, they'll stay in bed together, because there's no better option for Aleix. And honestly, I don't really see anybody else that's going to be willing to come to Aprilia and work that hard. I can see another person coming to Aprilia, and then them and Mav can keep each other company at the back of the grid.
Yeah, I would be careful with these posts about rider salary. I haven't seen the post. I don't know what's the source, but a while ago I've seen a similar post. So I asked Remy if this is somewhat accurate or not, and he was like, "I wish." So yeah, you have
Remy Gardner.
Yeah.
Because Remy Gardner and Raul are making basically the base salary that you can pay a MotoGP rider. I think they have like a minimum that they're allowed to pay a MotoGP rider now. I think it's like $250,000 a year or something like that. And that's what those dudes, I think Raul and him, I think $250,000 or $350,000 a year is what they get paid.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number Remy is making, and all of these numbers were excluding sponsors, because that's how a rider gets the main the main part of his money. But
Yeah, do you really think
yeah,
Fabio would be wearing a scorpion helmet for free?
yeah. But all I wanted to say with this is I don't know if it's accurate. You probably don't know either. So only the rider and the teams know. So it's kind of a speculation which is pointless because you don't know. And what's the source and why isn't it made public by official sources like in the NFL or in the NBA, for example?
Yeah.
So it's hard to discuss salary if you don't have a valid source. So I would be careful.
That's a very good point. We have to take out the giant grain of salt for sure.
Yeah, but Maverick, I'm not disappointed in his performance, but it wasn't great either. But considering that he had a poor Saturday, which was a little bit strange because he was at the end out on wet tires, and he did great on those wet tires. Simply the slicks at this moment were faster, so he was starting from 14th, I believe, something along the line. And he managed to pick up a few points. He made some ground. So yeah, it's okay. It's okay performance, and he seems to get to grip with the bike. So I think it's unfair to criticize him too much for this performance, and we will see how he develops over the season.
Yeah, I definitely think he did the best he was going. I don't think he would have ended up any higher than third. I mean, a third was a gift because honestly, he should have finished fifth. You know.
Yeah.
But I think a third was a gift, and even Massimo Rivola said that even if he had gotten a fantastic start and qualified amazing, that he didn't expect Aleix to be able to keep up with Fabio. So maybe with a perfect everything, maybe he could have finished second, but a third he should be very, very happy with a third on the day.
Yeah.
Remember, just a few races ago, they were ecstatic to get their first podium. Like, dude, just be happy. It's okay.
I actually thought Aleix might win before the race because my thought was that Joan Zarco always finishes second. So he won't win. Joan Mir simply can't win a race. So he won't win either. Jack Miller can't preserve his rear tire. So he won't win either. Fabio can't overtake a Ducati. So he won't win either. So the only one left was pretty much Aleix. Turns out I was wrong, but it's crazy to predict MotoGP races. But all in all, I would say it's a great result for Aprilia, and I think that maybe Aleix would have been able to at least compete for the podium places because of his speed towards the end. Yes, he got lucky, but he was also very fast, and he was closing in on those guys. So a little bit disappointing was Honda. I mean, Alex Marquez did a very, very great race for his standards, but Mark was disappointing. Paul was disappointing, and Nakagami crashed and was disappointing. So, where do you go from that?
Yeah, it's just a complete disaster over at Honda. I mean, Marc Marquez is definitely getting a better handle on the bike. He said that they had brought some new things to Circuit of the Americas that was giving him a better feeling with the bike, but he didn't want to say too much about it because it's not something that you can see from outside of the bike. So he kept that, very close to his chest. So that was interesting. Alex Marquez, I think, is riding like somebody that is riding for a career. I mean, I think the whole magic sauce of we all know at this point what HRC did. They gave Alex a job to keep Marquez happy. They signed him to a 5-year deal when nobody signed 5-year deals, and then fired him before even the first race of the season, put him on LCR. You know what I mean? And so with the situation with Marquez and his physical fragility at this point, I don't think that Honda feels like they need to keep him as happy with the whole Alex situation anymore. This is, of course, speculation, but I think Alex was riding like somebody that's really hoping to stay in the job. I mean, the dude is a 2-time champion, so he's not a chump. I think people forget. If it was anybody else, they'd be like, well, he's a 2-time champion, but we've seen champions come and go before. Tito Rabat was a Moto2 champion. Look at him. He's gone. Yeah. So Alex Marquez hasn't really lived up to the promise, that famous interview that Mark gave where he was like, oh, Alex is the faster one, and everybody, you could hear, if you open the window, you could hear the whole world go, bullshit. you know, in unison, you know, but it was interesting to see them race each other. And I would have loved it if Alex would have finished ahead of Mark. I think it literally would have been the only time where both of them have finished and Alex has finished ahead of Mark fair and square. But of course that didn't happen. I'm going to be very interested to see what happens with that. I mean, especially with all the other rumors that you hear, you know what I mean? I think if Taka is not there, Gura will be there, but you know, who knows what's going on at LCR. But has Alex done enough to warrant having a ride on the premier satellite Yamaha? You know, and I don't know if he has. But then again, who could have? The bike has been, up until very recently, up until basically this season, the bike has been trash for anybody but Marc Marquez. So,
yeah, the issue I have with Alex Marquez, there are 3 points. First is regarding the race, that he had the hard rear tire on, so I expected him to be better towards the end of the race. He didn't. Mark overtook him. Okay, fair enough. It's Marc Marquez. He's good. Deal with it.
It was right at the line. It was right at the line.
They had a great battle, and Alex did a very, very great race. I don't want to take anything away from it, but the famous but, it's Portimao, and he does good, well in Portimao. So I want to see this performance on multiple tracks to have this conversation about he is riding for his seat or he has done enough to stay. You know, for me, it's just, I don't want to say a fluke, but it's just a good track for him, you know? And the overall picture with Alex Marquez doesn't look great to me, because it seems like he is developing backwards. He came into MotoGP 2020, had a great race in Aragon, where he challenged for the victory. He had a great race in Le Mans, where he finished on the podium in the wet. And yes, Honda did him dirty, but he didn't do much last year. He had a great race in Portimao, where he finished, I believe, something like 5th along the line again. And now he doesn't do anything but crash, and is good in Portimao. So that's the issue more than the actual results with Alex Marquez. If he was a rookie, okay. If he was in a second year, okay. If he had a bad bike, okay. But he isn't making any progress at all. So if I'm Honda, I'm looking towards Chandra and Ogura to replace them. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Team Asia bike, I'm assuming, will always have at least one Asian rider. I mean, so if Taka goes, Ogura is getting that seat. I mean, it's or Samkat Chandra, maybe. But I think so far, Ogura has been the name that's been more spoken about. But that other LCR bike, I mean, you know, how happy can you be with, you know, you have Marc Marquez's brother, but like you said, all he does is wreck. And you know, every other guy, like say, for example, Petrucci, he came in as a nobody every season, even when he was on shit bikes, you know, back with the CRTs, but every year he did a little bit better up until when he won Magellan. And then he won again, you know, and then of course he's gone. But there was like this overall upwards trajectory to his career. You know, I mean, we're going to forget about KTM at the end. KTM, right? Yeah. We're going to forget about KTM at the end. You know, but with Marquez, you're right. Because at the tail end of 2020, even I was like, damn, all right, this guy he's doing all right. He was, you know, bringing that rear end around, going around turns. It really felt like he had gotten the handle of the bike. But yeah, since then, it's just been, I mean, either that or both him and Marquez have the same style. They both ride with the front, and now the bike is rear biased and they can't deal with it. I don't know. But I haven't been very impressed with him. I think the most impressive thing about Alex Marquez is how he doesn't, like his gigantic teeth. His gigantic teeth are the most impressive thing about him. Other than that, I'm not very impressed.
Yeah, I believe that Alex Marquez will have a spot at Honda as long as Marc Marquez is there and is valued at Honda. That's my opinion. We will.
You're probably right.
Yeah, we will see how much he can push it to the limits in with bad performances, especially with good riders coming up. But yeah, Nakagami, he doesn't do anything to stay at Honda. Paul Espargaro as well. He had a great start to the season, and I thought, okay, this might be a good year for him. But since his first race, he pretty much dipped.
Yeah, he had a nice little battle with Marquez. It was nice to see him hold his own against it, not just like be like, oh, here comes Mark, let me move over for him. So he gave him a little bit of stick, but not enough to, as much as you would expect. But again, right now, who would want to come over to the Repsol bike? It's funny the amount of names that I hear, going from place to place. But like, if you had the option of being on the Suzuki or the Repsol, would you go to the Repsol or Suzuki? I mean,
yeah, but do you have the option of the Suzuki? If you're a Suzuki, would you fire would you fire one rider? I would only fire one rider for Fabio, and anybody else can go fuck themselves.
Yeah.
So
100%.
yeah, I would take the Honda before I take nothing. And yeah, it's a difficult situation, but I believe Honda will get to grips with the new bike, because it's still a completely new bike. We can't forget that. And they will develop it. Marcus will have his moments. For example, he will win the Sachsenring Grand Prix.
He will win Sachsenring. We'll have to hear the Lord of the Ring, blah, blah, blah. Just like he's the king of Coda, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
We'll have to hear those things. I'm surprised the announcers don't get sick of saying that shit themselves, even,
Yeah, I believe
because by now you think they're over it. But
I watched it on the video pass, and it seems like the announcers are so in love with Marc Marquez that they love to talk about him at every instance. But
I'm surprised they can actually do the whole thing. You would think that after a while it would get very difficult to talk and be able to watch the race with both balls of Marquez in your mouth. It's got to be very hard to talk with both balls in the mouth, but somehow they make it work. I don't know. They're professionals.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it has to do in which way you have them in your mouth. If the dick is hanging over your one eye,
exactly. That's the right way.
You can watch above. You can watch above the butt if you dance long enough.
That's funny. Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, all you hear about half the race is how amazing he is. He could do anything, and it's the most amazing thing they've ever seen. And it gets tiresome.
Yeah, even if he finishes like 7th or something, it's the golden boy.
They'll find something good to say.
Yeah. And I don't really have a problem with that, because Marc Marquez as a rider is great, but I do have a problem if they are not talking equally as high about Pecco, for example, or Alex Rins. I mean, they mentioned Alex Rins. I don't want to state that they didn't talk about him at all, but the level of respect for Marc Marquez in average situations is much higher than for other riders because of his past. But what you did in the past doesn't define you now. What you do now defines you now in every sport, pretty much. What have you done for me lately?
Exactly. I mean, like, Pecco finished well, and they're like, a good finish, all things considered. But if Marquez does the same thing, it would have been like a heroic ride to a valiant 8th place by the 8 times world champion. As we all know, he's riding with major injuries that he suffered and blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, okay, I get it. I mean, and I think part of that probably comes from, they're told who to amp up. I mean, obviously he's the golden boy right now of MotoGP, even with his current results. But you're right. I mean, we'll see what happens with Marc Marquez. But
talking about injuries.
Go ahead.
Talking about injuries. On the last show, we discussed the possibility of Remy having still problems with his broken ribs that he suffered last year in Portimao, and his broken hand that he suffered in a motocross accident. And I said I will ask him. So I went ahead and asked him, and he said it's not a big of a problem. So yeah, he wasn't talking extensively about it, so I have to guess here. I guess it's not like in the tests or last year in Portimao where this was the main problem, but it doesn't seem like it's no problem at all, just to clarify this. But KTM had kind of a disappointing weekend. I mean, Miguel Oliveira, where did he finish? Like 7th?
Yeah, it was really bad. I have the result right here.
And nevertheless, he dominated in the wet, as he did in Indonesia and couldn't capitalize at all. I mean, he had a okayish performance, but nothing special. So where do you go with him? Also, Brad Binder, he crashed, didn't do much in the race, and he wasn't in a good position. And at the beginning of the season, Brad Binder seemed to be like a title contender. Okay, he's doing very, very good. And then he fell off. Pretty much things there Brad Binder does. And Miguel Oliveira, he does it as well. That they just get the expectations high. Have, for example, Brad Binder have a rookie win in his third race, or last year in Austria, where he was great in the rain with the slicks, but then they disappear out of nowhere with no explanation at all. And Miguel Oliveira, the same thing. What is happening there? And
I think that the bike is, they say the bikes nowadays have to be made for the tires. I think there's something about the bike. It's not playing well with the tires as much as they would like it to, because some constructions they do great with, and that's really their problem, right? KTM is very spiky. They're great, then they're nowhere. They're great, and then they're nowhere. Miguel Oliveira finished fifth, but would expect.
He was running in seventh, but then Jack Miller and Joan Mir crashed.
But my personal philosophy is if I have a personal parade to the racetrack, I want to win the race. I don't want to finish fifth. Either that or finish fifth, but don't have the parade, because that's embarrassing. Remy Gardner finished 14th. As we all know, Raul Fernandez was out. I mean, morally, he was in the race, but in reality, he was not in the race.
And morally, he finished top rookie.
Yes, morally, he finished in the points, but in reality, he was in the bed somewhere. And then Brad Binder. Brad Binder was a really sad, because I think Brad Binder is the best rider that KTM has right now. And I think that they're very smart to have recognized that and have signed him on to some insane, I think, 4-year contract or something like that. Because if I was any other team, I would be looking at Brad Binder if he was available. But especially at the beginning of the season, I mean, he rides well. He's an entertaining rider to watch. Personally, I used to root for Rossi, then Ducati, and then Brad Binder. And so I'm really, other than Pecco, I really enjoy watching Brad Binder really race. And it's a pity that he wrecked out. The KTM, they have the resources, they have the Red Bull money, they have the number of bikes on the track, they have good riders. I mean, it isn't for lack of amazing riders. I mean, what other team would not want Remy Gardner and Raul Fernandez, or either one of them? I mean, you're taking the champ or the guy that's the only dude that's won more intermediate class races than Marc Marquez, but it is amazing how Marc Marquez came into the Premier thing and won his second race, whereas Raul Fernandez, I don't even know if he's finished top 10 yet. And so he's been a bit of a disappointment, but KTM, but the bike, it could be the bike. In the beginning, I don't think his heart was in it. He said he doesn't want to be at KTM. So how hard are you going to ride a bike that you don't want to ride? The
funny thing is that he apparently wanted to be at Yamaha, which doesn't seem to be the smart choice either. But I would give Raul Fernandez a break, considering that 2 years ago he was on a Moto3 machine. He won a couple of races in 2020 on the Moto3, got promoted, and had an exceptional season. And it's just speculation again, but it could be that he just wanted to have one more year of development because he felt like he was ready to ride the big bikes or whatever. Remy said to me that the Moto2 bikes take so much maturity to ride, and we see it with Pedro, that it's not as easy as Raul Fernandez made it seem like. So I would give him a break on this. I don't think he's disappointing.
And I think it's really difficult. I mean, we have to always remember these are exceptional young kids, though. I mean, they're kids. So I mean, you can't sit there and like just hammer down on them. I mean, how old is Raul? Like 19, 20, maybe. I mean, I know if you told me he's 25, I wouldn't believe you. I mean, he's younger than that for sure.
No way.
I mean, these are kids. you know, and so yeah, you give them a little bit of leeway. I think with KTM, my big thing I think is just something about the bike and the tires is not working. I think they have the best engineers. I think they have the best electronics guys and everything else. I think they're just as baffled. They in the beginning of the season, they were in testing and stuff, they were running into issues where they were bringing so much new stuff. So it's not for lack of resources, but I think they're almost trying to throw too many things into it and messing it up as opposed to working with what they've got. And I think they've started to distill it down to what's mostly working. And then if they can just find the right setup, they're able to win. That's the weird thing about KTM. They're just as able to win the race any weekend as they are to finish dead last. Yeah. And I don't think you can say that about most of the other manufacturers. You know what I mean? You either win or you're last. I mean, Yamaha will still finish in the middle. Suzuki will somehow finish in the middle, or they could win. You wouldn't expect Suzuki to win one weekend and finish dead last the next weekend. And KTM just happens to be that team.
Yeah, and don't forget KTM is developing their own suspensions with WP. So you don't know if they have the same level of suspension as Öhlins has, for example, because they have so much more data, they have so much more experience. It could be a suspension issue, who knows? And Remy certainly won't go out and tell everybody. Raul won't, and the factory boys, they have a history of not talking about the issues too much. So we are just left speculating, but it seems weird that Miguel Oliveira is more of an up and down rider than Brad Binder, because Brad Binder is, to me, you're a much bigger Brad Binder fan than I am. He's not special to me. He's not special because he has his occasions where he has a good day, where he had a very, very good night of sleep and wakes up and is very, very impressive. And then he's average again. He's average again. So, and Miguel Oliveira has it. He's like the modern Maverick Vinales. One day he's unbeatable, and the next race he disappears.
I think it all depends on if he had a fight with his stepsister the night before or not. You know, if they're fighting, things just don't go well. You know.
Yeah, maybe their parents separated them. So
it's like, you guys stop fighting, otherwise you're both grounded. You know, I think I do think that they'll sort it out, but yeah, I just I don't know what the deal is. Honestly, you have to be a little bit more malleable. I think is KTM still the only team now still using a trellis frame? I think they still have some elements of a trellis frame, which is interesting that they're sticking to their guns about that. But I mean, hell, Honda makes Nissan brakes, and I think they make Showa suspension. But even they go with Öhlins and Brembo.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, man, like, look, I could probably sew my own pair of shoes, but if I want to play basketball, I'm probably just going to go buy a pair of Jordans. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, dude, like, sometimes you have to put your pride away. I mean, do you really think that if they're going to somehow develop WP to a level where other teams are going to want that instead of Öhlins and the decades of knowledge that goes behind that? I mean, I think that's a fool's errand. I think they're shooting themselves in the foot with that. It's like, I mean, Honda is literally not using their own product because they think an Italian company makes a better brake than they can. And somehow you have too much ego to use the same suspension as everybody else. You know, I mean.
Yeah, KTM is running the steel frame, which is kind of their thing to do. They do it with all their road bikes. And the last thing that needs to happen for KTM is using a V2, because they do it as well with all the road bikes. But would be interesting to know if the suspension is on the level. Maybe we're completely off and they're better, but just the package around is bullshit. Who knows? Who knows? I don't know for certain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, but
I think people in the paddock would know for certain, and if they did, you'd start seeing more teams like, Aprilia has decided to switch over to WP suspension now. If it was truly better, they would know. Kind of like how Ducati came out with started using the carbon fiber forks, and then everybody else started using the carbon fiber forks. Yeah. You know what I mean?
But again, if you're KTM and Aprilia comes to you and says, hey, your suspension is much better than ours, can I buy yours? You would say, fuck off, because you want to keep that advantage.
Yeah, good
That's
point.
the other side, you know? So effectively, we don't know. We are just speculating. And
that's what all the fun is, Leo. Come on. Guessing is the best
you're
part.
right. But
You know?
I'm looking forward to the episode in the summer break with all the silly season stuff where we can really speculate and just talk mad shit.
Absolutely.
For this. Yeah.
I'm very excited about that.
Talking about KTM, there was this injury of Raul Fernandez, which brings us to the next big topic, which was track conditions. We had the issue in qualifying in MotoGP, especially in Q1, where everybody who went out on slicks immediately crashed, because it's worse in Portimao when all the water runs down and concentrates on a certain area of the track, because that's the lowest, and on the highest it's the most dry. So it's different than on other tracks who are more flat. So my question there is, if you are race direction, would you delay the session for not much, just 10 minutes or 15 minutes to let the track dry up and not risk any injuries? Because what if Enea Bastianini got injured? What if Pecco Bagnaia got injured? You know, this is a huge it's a huge risk for Dorna to promote their product. I mean, the NFL did it pretty much with the quarterback rules, that they didn't allow defenders to hit the quarterback below the knees, or the stupid roughing the passer rule. You know, they are just protecting their best product to market, because at the end of the day, it's a company and they want to make money. And of course, you care about the rider's health.
No, of course.
And no, but certainly you don't want to see riders injured. You don't want to see your top stars injured, because this is a bad situation for any company or a sporting league or whatever. So yeah, let's just talk about the track conditions, which, why don't they delay it for 15 minutes? And in Q2, everything was fine. So they didn't have to delay it for much. You know, why risk this? Why risk this?
It's a couple of things, right? So the first thing, the first thing is the major thing, which is that, sure, we have video pass. We can watch whenever we want to watch. But in a lot of parts of the world, this is shown on TV. And anytime they do a delay, anytime they have a red flag, it pushes the schedule of the race out, or the program. They have to cut it short. And TV companies, which is, again, as you mentioned, Dorna, as a company, they're selling their item to retailers, TV stations all over the world, to then show to their subscribers. It complicates that. So that's the simple answer is TV scheduling is why they try to avoid doing that unless they absolutely have to. But the other thing is, so many times we've seen it's like, it's sunny, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, and then it starts raining near the end. Who knows that in 15 minutes, the conditions wouldn't have been worse than they were before. And then instead of having even a moderately dry track, now you have no hope of getting out of Q1, because there's no way somebody on full wets is going to do better than, good enough to get into. Maybe they might do better against each other, but they're not going to be setting some insane time, in Q2 or Q1. So the conditions could have been worse in 15 minutes than they were at that point. So I understand what you're saying, but it's just, it's between that risk and the whole, okay, so we might be looking at even worse conditions, and we have to call our affiliates and be like, hey, sorry, we're delaying this. I think between that, they took the easier choice, which was like, hey, seems dry enough to me. Good luck, guys. Ambulances are there, and there. Let us know if you need one. Which is a bit bold, but I think those are probably the two major factors, and the TV thing being primary.
Yeah, I get the TV aspect, but you should expect from MotoGP that rider safety is more important than TV contracts.
That's like saying to Amazon, worker happiness is more important than getting your package in one day.
Yeah.
It's not though.
Yeah.
You know.
But the second argument, I strongly disagree, because I believe that worse conditions are actually better conditions, because if it's a soaking wet track or if it's more dry, then either situation is better. And if you have everybody on the same conditions at the same time on the track, they can compete in a fair way with each other. And if you have full wets on with a wet track, this is way safer than having a kind of dry track, but kind of wet track with slicks. That's why you see injuries. And usually crashes happen when you lose the front, and nothing really happens. The bad crashes happen when you lose the rear and high set, and this is exactly what happened to pretty much every rider who crashed. So even in Moto2, these boys were going through the corner, the rear went loose, got grip again, and they were firing through the air. So I would argue that worse conditions are actually better. And if you really are concerned about riders' health, and in the next step want to promote your product better, then you want to have healthy riders. So I would
I mean, it does make you wish for the days of when intermediate tires were a thing, right? So as for the conditions, intermediate would have been maybe the best, you know, in the situation. But yeah, I see what you mean. Like full dry or full wet is better than mixed conditions for sure.
Yeah, but even with the intermediates, who knows? You really have 90% of the track dry where the slick tire is working. I believe Alex Marquez was like 3 seconds faster than Maverick Vinales at the end. So I don't know if the intermediate tire would solve this problem, because the wet tires are actually quite good on dry track, especially the harder option. In terms of lasting and getting to grips, not lasting over a full race distance, you know.
No, of course.
But for qualifying, it's fine, it's okay. Maverick did a good job, and I would like them to have the session delayed a little bit, and Raul Fernandez probably would have started the race. And you know, it's better to have healthy riders. And this brings us to the next big talking point, which is Moto2 with this insane crash, where there are two major issues. The first one is that they red flagged the session 1 lap too late, where everybody crashed. But we are now in a situation where it's easy to criticize a decision that has been made in real time. You could say, okay, somebody had to realize that it rained down there. They should have waved the red flags, but they didn't. Okay, I don't disagree with the decision, but I don't agree with it as well. You know what I mean? It's easy for us to criticize, but it's difficult.
Well, hindsight, they say the hindsight is always 20/20, of course.
That's pretty much my point. But the big issue, which I totally don't get, is how you enforce the stupid 5-minute rule in this situation. I mean, I get it under a normal red flag where 1 or 2 riders cause a red flag that you don't want them to give them X amount of minutes to come back, repair their bikes, and then run again. But in a situation where the reason for all the crashes were pretty much that the race direction, whose job is it to protect the riders from circumstances like these, they fucked up. It's a difficult decision to make. I get it. We discussed it, but the reason is that the race direction didn't wave the red flag at the exact right time. So I believe it's unfair to then say, okay, all the riders in front who are in a massive disadvantage because they are at the front and everybody in the back sees that there's a massive crash, so they slow down. That's natural. Why wouldn't you? To protect your own life and to protect others. But those people who are in the front pretty much get fucked by this decision that they can't restart the race by this stupid 5-minute rule, and effectively gifted Celestino Vietti a huge championship lead I mean, you still have to finish second, you still have to do it. I don't want to take anything away from the riders who competed in the second race, because A, it's not their fault, and B, they did good. No, I mean, congratulations to Joe Roberts. He did a very, very impressive race.
Yeah, but there was no way he was going to win that race under normal circumstances.
Yeah, he pretty much finished, what was it, 9th, and everybody in front of him crashed out. Yeah, he stayed on the bike, but he was not the fastest rider. And I have a big, big problem, because you couldn't restart the race in a fair way, where it's fair to everybody, because when you have a burnt down bike like Simone Corsi has, or a ripped off front like Zonta had, that it's simply not possible to restart the race in a fair way where everybody can compete again. It is possible, but then you had a 2-hour delay, and we covered this a minute ago. So I would love the F1 approach, that they just said, okay, red flag, half points, go home. Aaron Canet wins the race, gets 12.5 points.
We finally learned what the goddamn bow tie is all about.
Yeah. The bow tie, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Just as a second note. Yeah, but I have a big, big problem with the restart of the second race, simply because I believe it's not fair towards the riders on the front, who crashed out without any fault of their own.
That's true, but fair is a very weird word when it comes to sports. You know, I mean, well, first of all, race direction, it's kind of like human resources. Okay, so, you know, they say human resources isn't there for the employees or to protect the employees. Human resources is there to protect the company. Okay, and the thing is, race direction, yeah, a byproduct of what they do is to protect the rider, but really their job is to make sure that the rules are sort of followed, and that is to protect the sort of the integrity of the sport, if you will. And that's really the thing. You see, sometimes good luck happens to you, and then sometimes good luck happens against you, or bad luck happens to you. And yes, you're at the front, and that sucks. But when you start playing around with the rules in that way, sure, the half point thing would be fine. Though, again, I don't think that enough laps had gone by for that to even necessarily be fair, per se.
No,
but you know, the thing is,
when
you said there was only eight laps in, right?
But when we talk about the F1 approach, they did the race in Spa where they had 2 laps behind the safety car and gave half points.
Yeah, that was a fiasco.
Not to discuss the F1 race, which I agree was a disaster.
They just did that so they wouldn't have to give people a refund for their damn ticket.
Fun fact: I was at that race in Spa, and we didn't.
I remember. I feel bad for you.
Yeah, we didn't get anything back, but that's a whole different topic.
They did that race just so that you wouldn't have to give you a refund.
Yeah, but what I the point that I'm making is that if you go that way, that 2 laps is enough. So they had like 8 or 9 laps, I can't remember, but it should be enough to say, okay, half points. We can't restart the race. Oh my God, it's getting late. In a way that it's fair to compete for a world championship. I mean, it's not about this race only, it's about the world championship. And
I mean, because then, you know, let's say, I don't like the 5-minute rule necessarily either, but then you start saying, you know, like, I think we've discussed this a little bit, it was like, well, then where do you draw the line? Okay, it's like, so if the top 5 guys in the championship are in a red flag situation, then you get 15 minutes to get the bike back together, 30 minutes to get back the bike. It becomes a 30-minute rule. You know, is it okay? More than 10 guys wrecked in this one wreck, and so now you guys have extra time. It would just be a snowball that would just, you know, you saw how again, to not talk about the F1 finale, you saw how much of an impact the race direction made and how much controversy there was. If the end of the championship came to where one person was head and shoulders above, that would be fine. But what if after this whole thing went down and then 16 races later, there's 2 guys neck and neck who would not have been neck and neck if the 5-minute rule had been followed, and that guy wouldn't have been allowed to win or race, and the other guy would have been a clear victor. If you're that other guy, you feel really salty about the fact that the rules were changed, regardless of the circumstances, right? And so I think it's just one of those situations that it's just bad luck, and race direction is in a tough spot with that. Because, I mean, everybody wants to see more riders, especially the top guys racing. But there's just no good solution to that. They made the best out of what they could, but I understand the frustration. but it just either they need to make it like, hey, from now on it's the 15-minute rule, not the 5, because the 5 minutes they can eat that up anywhere. They can chop 5 minutes off the end of the press conference, or they can chop 5 minutes off. They don't show the national anthems or whatever. But 15 minutes is a bit of an ask. And again, I think it has a lot to do with scheduling, and part of it just has to do with that. That's the rule. And if they started changing things, people would be up in arms over it.
Yeah, there is no way where you can satisfy everybody 100%.
No.
But even, as I mentioned earlier, even if you were able to give riders like 15 minutes, it still wouldn't be the perfect solution, because there are bikes burning down. You can't fix them in an hour. So
Yeah.
I think the most elegant version would be just to say, okay, went the wrong way. We kind of fucked up ourselves as a race direction by not showing the red flag, because I've been to Portimao last year. And if you're in turn 1 and turn 2 and turn 3, there's a huge grandstand. It's free air, no rooftop above you.
Oh, wow.
On the grandstands. Usually it's very, very beautiful, but not when it's raining. So somebody had to realize from the staff there, from the marshals, that it started to rain, that the track wasn't in a safe condition to ride on with slicks. Yeah. And then call race direction, say, hey, all hell breaks loose. It's raining cats and dogs. Race direction says, fuck, red flag. And again, you want to be a little bit more careful in these situations, because Aaron Canet, he injured himself. He broke his 2 fingers and a bone on the right hand, I believe. Or vice versa, I don't know. Nevertheless, even if you gave him 50 minutes, no way he would have been able to race, because he was fucking injured. And that's why I believe, okay, it's not the fault of the riders that this crash occurred. So it's pretty much the fault of the race direction. Can you blame him? It's difficult, because it's a difficult decision to make. And that's not my main issue. But they fucked up. If you want it or not, they fucked up. And if you can blame them or not, they fucked up. And that's why I would tend to give half points and just say, okay, we will fight to live we will live to fight another day this way.
Yeah, and that would probably be the easiest solution, because that would satisfy the people that wrecked first. That would satisfy the timing situation. That would help with a lot of things, But you saw a lot, if you watch the Amazon documentary, it took them like 4 laps to figure out what to do with Fabio riding around with the suit open, which some people would say should have been an instant black flag. That should have not even been a question.
I was one of these people.
And it took them that long, and by the time they figured out what they should do, the race was over. And then they were like, well, next time don't do that, And so there could have been, what I'm saying is that there could have been somebody in that grandstand soaking wet being like, yo, it's raining, and they would have still taken like probably 2 laps to figure out what to do, and by that time that wreck probably would have still happened. So probably the half points is probably the best way to go. But it's just, I think situations like this happen quite rarely. I mean, when was the last time you remember? I remember the last time I saw a huge wreck like this, but it was years and years and years ago. I think in Moto 3, where there was like something on the circuit in the same spot, and you saw just like bike after bike after bike after bike go off. I think 11 bikes maybe wrecked in that one corner. I can't remember which race it was though, but
so it's probably Le Mans for a fact, and I believe it was 2014 or 2015.
2014, yeah. It was just like, oh my god, what is going on? So, but yeah, it'll be interesting. It's interesting, but I don't think it's something that happens enough for them to make a big deal out of it. And they're just trying to keep as many people happy and trying to cover their own ass as much as they can.
Yeah, even with the Fabio situation you mentioned, it would be nice to not hire plumbers and primary school teachers to sit in race direction. Hire people who are actually competent to do the job, because the race direction has a track record of doing everything wrong except looking for track limits. That's what they can do. And they
and even that's electronically done for them now.
Yeah. So I have a huge problem with the decisions of the race direction, because what if Fabio crashed last season and he could have probably died?
Yeah,
in the
I mean,
incident where you have your levers open. You don't want to
exactly.
imagine what the fuck could happen.
No, he
So
would have been skinned alive if he fell down. I mean,
yeah,
like
and
you can't even imagine.
it's not, I can't comprehend how you can be so ignorant that you don't wave a black flag instantly in this situation.
Instantly.
I
Yeah,
mean, I was sitting in front of the TV saying black flag.
black
The
flag. I
second
mean,
it occurred,
that was the
because,
easiest thing.
yeah, because
Yeah, I said to my wife, I was like, he's gonna get black flagged. He can't race without that. The rules
yeah,
specifically say all gear has to be properly put on and properly fastened. That's obviously not properly fastened. That's a black flag.
yeah,
He has to pull over, come into the pit, fix it, and then he can go back out.
yeah. But
But
who does
he
it?
has to stop. Of
They're
course not.
racing drivers. They're a different breed of human being,
Exactly. No,
and they
I
don't.
completely understand.
You can't be conscious about the risk you're taking in this moment when you ride a motorcycle on this level. You have to simply not think about it, otherwise you won't be fast.
Or
So
who would do it?
it's not an
Yeah.
issue the racing rider has. It's an issue with the race direction. And I don't want to talk extensively about the thing that last season happened, but
Sure.
it was even more embarrassing that they punished him after the race with a stupid penalty,
Yeah.
with a time penalty.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah, at that point, just let it go and just be like, hey, next time this is gonna happen. That would be like me punishing my kid like for a math test he did bad on last week. At that point, the moment is gone. You know what I mean? It's like doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. You gotta take care of the situation then, or just leave it alone and realize that you guys need to do better.
Yeah.
So I completely agree. And yeah, this whole red flag situation with Moto2 this weekend, hopefully it's a learning opportunity and they move on in a better way. But I wouldn't hold my breath.
Yeah. I don't think they will learn a thing. The only thing they're learning how to punish track limits.
Yeah.
And that's stupid. So the only thing left is Moto3, which was kind of left out. I don't know if you even watched the race, being in America where
yeah, no, I normally watch Moto3 tonight. I will sit down and watch it so that I can talk about it tomorrow. So unfortunately, I don't have as much of an opinion on Moto3, though the racing is always very exciting. You know, I think maybe it was a little bit more exciting when Pedro Acosta was in Moto3, but it's always a good show. But unfortunately, I don't have too much to add for that. So
yeah, don't worry. I believe we have covered everything extensively. We had
I think so.
Usually a time frame of like an hour, and I don't know how long we are.
We're at an hour and a half, actually.
Yeah, so we blew it. No, but Moto3 was interesting, but just a typical Moto3 race. I hope you will enjoy it when you watch it later. And everybody who listened, thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to check out BrotoGP Army. And the stream is tomorrow, right?
Yeah, it's usually on Tuesday nights, 8:00 Eastern time in America, whatever that is for you.
Yeah, figure it out by yourself, because too damn
I mean,
late.
I know, I think it's like Greenwich Mean Time -4, if that's easier or something.
Yeah, I believe Washington is like 6 hours away from GMT, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yep.
But there's this weird thing with wintertime and summertime, and just look at your phone.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
Your phone is smarter than you.
Put in Washington, D.C., 8 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you very much for joining me. I hope you had as much fun as I had. And yeah, you really saved me, because yeah, I kind of spontaneously wrote you if you had time, because Keelin obviously is on vacation and we couldn't make it work. So I don't know how I will do it next week with me being in Jerez. So yeah,
well, I appreciate you having me. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Yeah, it was a little bit out of it. I was glad I was looking at my phone, because normally I was in a conference call, so I had my notifications off. I just happened to be looking at my phone when your message popped up, and I was like, oh, all right, well, let's put something together real quick. So but it was a lot of fun. It's always nice talking to somebody that's as knowledgeable and passionate about MotoGP as you are. You know, it's always nice because in America it's not as big of a sport, and so there's not so many people to discuss it with. I have my circle of friends, and of course everybody in the BrotoGP Army, the majority of them are American, but it's always nice to talk with somebody in depth with it. So I really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, that's very kind of you. And I love what American racing is doing for America in general. They're doing a great job. They have a youth program. They're bringing over dudes from Moto America to Moto2, which is a very, very smart way of approaching things, because superbikes are easier to finance. And they have great riders coming up. Rocco Landers, for example, he's very young, very talented. I'm excited to see how he develops. So yeah, American racing is doing a very, very good job for the United States. And Cameron Bobby, he showed it. He was on the top, at the top, and who knows what could have been, but yeah, that's not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited that on the opposite, I'm excited that Danilo Petrucci is now in Moto America, and he's won every race so far, I think now. So as you would expect for a rider of his level, you know.
Yeah.
And so when he comes to New Jersey Motorsport Park, which is just maybe about 4 hours drive for me, I'm definitely hoping to get up there. And hopefully, I think Moto America is not as strict and as difficult to get into the paddock as MotoGP. So hopefully I'll be able to go say hi to him. We've gotten a lot of cameos from him on BrotoGP Army in the past. So
yeah, he follows BrotoGP Army as well, right? He did a couple of videos.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
yeah,
I love the guy.
Yeah, he's a very cool guy. I like him a lot. So, but thank you again, Leo. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.